I just figured I would show the checklist and we can talk about it a little bit here. So for a buyer opportunity in our under contracts, we've got the consumer guide, of course, that nothing's changed there. Something that a lot of people have expressed that they were not used to was the America's Preferred Home Warranty application being required to either be waived or accepted with every listing or buyer that we take. The reasoning behind that is that they will pay a portion of our errors and omissions deductible as long as that is in the file. That does not mean that you have to use them. It doesn't even mean that you cannot present another home warranty. If you have a home warranty that you prefer to use, that is totally fine. We just have to have that America's Preferred in there. Mindy? No, go ahead. I think I know where you're going, but go ahead. Great. Yes. No matter what, our client must sign or waive. Accept or waive. Yeah, so just explain to the client it has to do with our compliance. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything with this warranty company. It's just a paper that I'm required to have signed. Mm-hmm. Right. Right, exactly. Okay. Another thing, yes.
Katie?
Hi.
Hey, this is Michael Jones. I was trying to, I'm on my way into the office. I was running a little bit behind, but I couldn't hear what the question was, but I think my general concern is, like, if you're using another warranty, it seems like presenting that waiver causes issues or like additional questions.
So I would say,
I'm just not sure how others are dealing with that. Like, if you're providing them with a warranty, like another, not America's Preferred Home Warranty, it just seems like it's an awkward conversation.
So what I've done in the past, I just say that we're required to present it because our office kind of I present it like it's an affiliated business arrangement, because in a way it is. They're affiliated with every Keller Williams in the country. And so I say, because we have a relationship with them, we are required to present this to you, just to show that we have offered this warranty to you. I understand that we're using a different warranty. It's just one additional signature that will make sure that I am legally covered. I don't know if you would say anything different.
I usually say the same type of thing. I just let my clients know that our company has a couple ABAs with various companies. And we just have to disclose that we have a business relationship with those companies. And so although we're not using them for this particular transaction, we still have to have them signed on every file. So I'm going to send those over with the rest of the documentation to have you sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're signing a purchase agreement or a listing agreement indicating they don't want a warranty, that still is required.
Because though it says it in the purchase agreement, that's just the confirmation. The purchase agreement doesn't say anything about us having a relationship with them in any way. And so just presenting that extra document protects us. And Amanda was saying she thinks that there is something that would protect a seller as well in that event.
Yeah, they have some.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, can you guys hear Amanda okay when she's talking? Just to
You're
check.
the only person that I can hear.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard Amanda.
Oh, okay. I know. Okay. Whatever's easiest. Yeah, okay, so that explains it. Amanda was saying that there's some type of coverage for sellers in that case. That's why there was seemingly silence on this end, because Amanda was talking, we didn't know you couldn't hear. So yeah, that's just an additional benefit. She said it's not very much, but it is still there, and it is protection for you as the realtor in that case. Any more questions about that?
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, and then the Ohio Real Title Affiliated Business Arrangement. Our client must always sign that to disclose that we have a relationship with them, even if they're not being used. So say you have a listing, you would have your seller sign that. When you go under contract, if Ohio Real Title is not being used, then no one else needs to sign it. So you don't have to have the buyer's agent have their client sign it or anything like that. And then you're just good to go that way as well. So it's just the person that you represent, unless Ohio Real Title is being used, then both parties are supposed to sign it.
Katie, I have something on that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I've come across a few times in the past few months where we are doing a deal with another agent who also uses Ohio Real Title and has an ABA with them. And they oftentimes we will sign their ABA, and then I'll ask for them to sign ours. And they're like, well, we already signed one, and we both are using this. And Ohio Real Title has made it very clear that ours needs to be signed as well as the other one, because the other one protects the other agent and ours is for ourselves. But there's many agents out there that don't want to sign ours because they say, oh, well, you've signed ours and it's for the same company. Has anybody else run into that before?
Mindy's saying she hasn't run into that. I would think it depends on whose escrow team is doing the warranty. So I would say if it's a situation where both parties have an ABA with Ohio Real Title, that if you are ordering the warranty, or not the warranty, if you're doing the title order, then both parties should sign yours. And if you are using the other person's escrow team, then I would say that your client should also sign theirs. And always have your client sign yours no matter what.
Right. Okay.
Mindy?
Thank you.
Oh, and Mindy is saying that escrow will probably want both. And I do believe I've encountered that in the past as well. So in that event, then just, tell the other agent that escrow is requiring it, and that pretty much, that should decide it for them. So
I've had to hound some agents for those. They just don't want to, I mean, it's the simplest signature, but they just don't want to do it.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Any other questions about that? All right. The 4-year protection, get a home inspection. So how many of you have everyone sign that no matter what when you represent a buyer? Okay, because I've heard some people say that they only do it when it's an FHA transaction, but it should be every single time. So that is now listed as required in our document list. It was not before. So again, I know it's been a little bit unclear in command because there have been things that were not really listed the proper way in terms of if they're required or conditional or optional. So I'm hoping that I've gotten all of that squared away. So that we will be in good shape in the future. And then of course, earnest money is required if it is a part of the purchase, lead-based paint, of course, before 1978. Another thing I wanted to talk about, we no longer have to have the request for insurance loss history because it is not in our purchase agreement. So if you are planning to have a loss history report run, I still probably will, just because I think Chris does a great job and I've had really good luck with my clients enjoying him. If you do it, then please upload it. If not, then don't worry about it. You don't have to do that anymore. Another thing I've noticed, the wire fraud addendum, we no longer need that additional piece of paper because it is a part of our purchase agreement and our listing agreement. When we redid the purchase agreement and listing agreement in September, that verbiage was added to both of those documents, so you don't have to have an extra one anymore. I see Rick is here. Hi, Rick. Pin him.
What was that last document you just said we didn't need to have signed?
The wire fraud addendum is no longer needed as an additional document because there is verbiage in our purchase agreement and listing agreement to cover that. So we no longer need an additional form.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, Katie,
Rick.
I'm here. So, sorry, I could
We're all good.
hear you before. I just couldn't get off mute.
All good. Perfect. Yes. Mhm. So I've been debating, I don't mind checking it and then just sending it back and saying, I know you're still waiting on this, so just upload it. I've been debating if it should be, because the other thing I know is that once it's approved, it's hard to remember to go back and add that removal of contingency agreement or amendment. And so I've been debating if we should just say it's due by the time that you receive that, to kind of, avoid that back and forth. Because I know that in the past, the rule was it was either 48 or 72 hours. And I know that that has certainly not been enforced. So I'm debating whether or not it would be better to just say, when you have the removal of contingency, please make sure everything is uploaded for a purchase. And then for a listing, please, by the time it's in the MLS, have it in there. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Mm-hmm. Any other questions so far? Okay. Then on the listing side of things, there shouldn't really be much that is different than what is expected, just the things that we talked about before. If you were listening to our team meeting on Thursday or listened to the recording, Rick brought up a good point that our America's Preferred Home Warranty data collection forms, if you are ordering one of them, you can get paid on that. And we've left a lot of money on the table. Rick, how much was that this year? Do you remember?
Yeah, we left $6,000 on the table. There was 60 warranties year to date. So that's only 11 months in. That we were procuring cause. We didn't fill out that data collection form, so they did not pay us.
Yeah. So again, that's not really, this is just like as a note, this is not something that's required in any way. If I put it conditional in the compliance for the listing because it allows you to be paid on the warranty, I just put that as a note if you are doing that. Yes.
If they get an email from me, they should have, if they haven't filled out that form on the property that was seen a couple months ago, they would have gotten an email from me on Friday.
Okay, and Gira said, if you couldn't hear, that if you have any outstanding data collection forms, if you had a warranty and there wasn't a data collection form, that you should have received an email from her on Friday, just to try and get those done so that you can get paid on them. Yeah, so there's really nothing different here. So other than that, does anybody else have any questions about compliance from a command and paperwork perspective? Okay, cool. Moving right along. I just really wanted to, again, show this legal library for ohiorealtors.org. Lots of good, like if you need a quick answer and it's something basic, obviously not meant for specific legal issues where you might need an attorney. But if it's just something that you want to know what the law says, it's all right here and it's separated very nicely. I discovered that about 6 months ago and have really found it useful. All right. So in terms of advertising, what questions do we have about how to make our advertising as compliant as possible, or like what tips can you share that you know? Like for instance, when you have your name or your team name on a piece of social media or on a flyer or whatever it is on a sign, how should that relate to, how should your name relate to like the brokerage name?
You might just tell everyone.
Gira knows.
So our logo should cover the name edge to edge.
No, our
Nope.
DBA. So our DBA is living, we are living. So everybody's name, like Katie Overton, her name has to be able to fit under the word living, both lengthwise and widthwise. So don't fall, yeah, be careful. It's not KW, it's the living, that's our DBA.
Mhm. It has to
I
be
can hear that.
the, what is it called? I'm blanking on,
More predominant.
More
Predominant.
prominent,
yeah, more prominent. It's a prominence role.
Yeah, but like someone was looking back home, I mean, that's.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but the problem is. Very good. I mean, living.
But are you registered as a team though? Do you have a team name registered? Or are you two individual agents? Have you got the whole team registered?
We have both on our signs and everything, and your whole team. But
Katie, can you repeat the question for people on Zoom? We can't really hear what's going on in the room.
Ask about the rule around teams, because I think the advertising is very critical to know. I think about.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Michaeline and Mindy asked, since Michaeline Paul and Bob Paul, that's a very long name. How does that fit under living alone? So I think that
So-
that's the question. Go ahead,
So-
Rick.
So I was blessed with a very long last name too. So for me to get Rick Tannenbaum is difficult. And the way that I resolve that is I just, on my business card, I just made the KW Living logo larger. I had to move some things around so that living could become a larger word. And then I could fit the name Tannenbaum underneath living. There's not, I mean, unfortunately, there's not a good answer for you guys with big names of how to do it. You have to follow the state laws, which says living has to be more predominant. And then if you're, I think I heard some questions about team advertising.
Mhm.
So if you're on a team, like Amanda, I think you're in that room, the Pullman team since the Pullman team is not a licensee, that can be the same predominance as KW Living. If you are on a team, you need to have at least one licensee's name on all your advertising. So you can't advertise just Keller Williams Living and the Paul team. You can advertise Keller Williams Living, the Paul team, and either Michaeline or Bob. But there has to be at least, the state doesn't care which licensee, it doesn't have to be the team leader, it just has to be one licensee has to be on that advertising.
Mhm.
And the same thing goes with social media.
Social media, same thing. Mhm.
It's only a problem when somebody gets on the investigation. It's not a problem until somebody gets it.
So the discussion in the room is that this is something that is not often followed. The issue arises when someone gets under investigation, and then the division will look for literally anything that you've ever done that might not be exactly right. So because when they open up one part of an investigation on you, they open up literally the entire thing. I see Lauren has her hand raised. Go ahead, Lauren.
So when we're doing our marketing for our team, are we allowed to do like KW Living and then Triv Team underneath of it, all in the same size font?
Yes.
But
Yes.
then
Triv-
you're saying an
Triv team
agency
cannot
would
be
have to be
more
on.
predominant. Triv team cannot be more predominant than living.
and the
but it
word-
can be equal predominance.
So it can be the same size font, but then there has to be a team, like a team member name on there too.
It's, don't confuse font size with predominance. Because when
Okay.
you get a name like Tannenbaum,
Mhm.
if I use the same size font on my name as I do with Living, my name
Okay.
will still be more predominant than Living is. So
Okay.
in my case, I have to use a smaller font, right? But and same thing with Triv Team. I mean, that's more letters than, I don't know what your logo exactly looks like, but the word Triv Team is a longer word than Living. So if
Right.
you use that same size font, then Triv Team will be more predominant.
Okay, so it would look bigger. So Triv Team has to be the same predominance than KW Living or just Living?
Just Living.
Just
Just Living.
Living. Okay.
So then just to like do a basic example here. So what we're saying then
Mhm.
is that it would have to fit here. It couldn't be any
Gotcha.
bigger.
Gotcha.
Fit under the word living, and living hides it if living was on top of it.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
So like that, basically.
Okay.
So that's compliant.
Right.
That's compliant now.
Okay. But then would you have to have an agent name on there as well, you're saying?
One of our postcards, like, we're-
There has to be one licensee name when you're on the
So like
team.
if like, then you'd have to put like CJ or whoever.
It could be any, it doesn't matter. The state doesn't care who it is, if it's the owner of the team or
Okay.
a buyer's agent or who it is, as long as there's a licensee's name on that advertising.
So that could be
Got it.
solved by if it's a sign doing like riders with the name, right? Would that be acceptable, an
Oh, yeah.
acceptable
Oh,
solution?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can have a rider.
Yeah,
And that rider will be larger than the panel that says the Pole Team and KW Living.
Right.
You can have Michael and Paul.
right.
On the side of the panel, you've got to have living be more predominant than
But
the
what
Pole
kind of
Team.
logic has to be in on that because of the-
Because your advertising is the panel, but then you have a rider that has a, it's like a call to action. I hate to say it. And I think what we need to say is, we all want to be compliant in the
Mhm.
event, because the division can also come into our brokerage and ask our broker for copies of everybody's advertising, and then they'll go through and tell you, this one's compliant, this one's not. And they did that at our last market.
If you can't hear Amanda, she's saying that we all want to be compliant because even if you don't have a complaint filed against you, the division could come into our brokerage and just do a random audit and request to see everyone's advertising. And she actually had that happen at her old brokerage.
Katie, you're on the Ohio Realtors. If you search team advertising, there's an article there.
Yep.
Anybody who's on a team that is interested in making sure that you're compliant, you can go to ohiorealtors.org.
Throw
and when
that
you
in
search,
the,
just search team advertising, and there's a blog about that.
throw it in there right now. I
And
just
also-
threw that in the chat right there.
There it is. Yeah, read the Ohio Realtors, they tell you. So Mindy asked if it's changed with teams because of this team being equal, but still having KW Living more predominant, whatever the word is. I don't think it has. Would it be up here on Ohio Realtors if anything changed recently? She said Nancy mentioned it.
Yes, so I think that really all of the rules with teams started happening in the last couple of years because before it wasn't as common, but as more and more people are forming teams, I think that's why they did that at the same time that they started enforcing that your name in the MLS has to be the same as your license in the same form. So I believe that all happened right around the same time. Mhm.
That's my son. KW, look, your policy has to go. Or what I think.
Yep.
This is what I-
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I have no idea on this.
And your sign is.
They're good
the
questions.
light thing that people will take a photo off and turn you in. Not you personally.
Yeah,
It's not gonna be the pages of your social media and necessarily your business card.
right.
Are you gonna talk about on the agency disclosure, how you, okay.
Yeah, I just was gonna, yeah, we could talk about agency disclosure. That was one of the things I thought we might want to touch on.
What if is there a single agent? Which is really the name and Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, that's a tough one for
That's a hard
people.
one.
And it's not a national thing, that's a state thing only. There are a lot of states where there is absolutely no rule whatsoever about how large your name can
When
be.
you go to KW Family Reunion, you see these gorgeous signs with like Via.
Right. And
it's
that's,
like, you can't do it.
and that's another thing that we have to be careful of when we're ordering signs and things like that, even if it's from like agentstore.com and all of the KW things, because they have templates that are not necessarily Ohio compliant. So just something to definitely think about. So were you talking about agency disclosure in terms of teams?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to come up and talk about
Yeah.
that? Here, if you come here, maybe everybody will be able to hear you. Don't flip over.
Hi, guys. So when you're writing an agency disclosure and you have a team on the other side, remember that team name. So if it was the pole team, if it was Michaeline's, I can't write an offer and call her the pole team. I have to write all the licensees on her team's name that have touched the property. And in her case, that would be, are you licensed, Mindy? Okay, in that case, it would be Michaeline and Bob. So I would say Michaeline and Bob Paul, gosh, I forgot your last name. And then, so the Pullman team, which some people might think, oh, it's just the Amanda Pullman team. We put our agency disclosures, if you're a team, we put it in our MLS listings so that if Rick's going to come along and write an offer, he goes into the supplements and we've already written it for him. And we will disclose who on our team has touched that property. So our marketing manager, Catherine, she's licensed, her name will be there. Graham, our concierge, his name will be there. My name's always there. So that way you're designating who on the opposite side of the transaction is a licensed member of the team. So I just want to make sure you guys that are growing with your teams, make it easy for other agents. Otherwise they'll mess it up and call you the pole team. Yeah. That's all.
I've seen that if there is, I was reading a little bit about this on this Ohio Realtors team advertising section. And the other option, if you have a lot of people and it won't fit on the agency disclosure, you can put the team name and have an addendum that has each licensee's name on it. So if you're a huge team and you have, you know, like 5 or 6 people who are touching it and you can't fit all of it on there, then that's another option for you as well.
Can I just add to that, Katie?
Sure.
I just want to make sure everybody understands why we need this on there. It's because when we're working with our clients, we're learning about, we get confidential information from them, right?
Mhm.
So anybody who's touching that file, who's licensed, they need to know that if there's confidential information, I'm sharing it with you, Katie. Well, they know that because my name and Katie's name are both on that agency disclosure. That's how they know who their fiduciary is. And anybody who sees that file is privy to any confidential information. That needs to be on there. With the
Very
exception
good.
of management level licensees, which have access to all the files.
I have a
Laura,
question on
go
that.
ahead. Mhm.
So, like, let's say one of the agents on our team, like, let's say Kate is, you know, doing a transaction, and we would usually have Kate and CJ both on there. But like, if she's doing the transaction and then all of a sudden she can't make the home inspection because she's sick, and David does it for her, would he technically need to be on that too?
I would add him at that point, yeah. So I
Yeah.
guess a good point would be if it's not too many people, or maybe just put every single licensed person on your team on an addendum and put that agency disclosure and addendum in the supplements when you have a listing. And when you're the buyer, obviously you have control over that. So just add that as a template for your agents to use when they are writing offers so that you have every single licensed person on there, no matter what. That
Okay,
would be, because if
And
you don't
then-
know, like if it happens that somebody could end up touching it, it's better safe
Right.
than sorry, because you wouldn't want to have any issue.
so then one other point for that is like part of our team is out of the citywide office and part is for the Solon. So can we put them all on the same one? Does it matter?
Okay, so Amanda said that that would matter. It would have to only be people who are part of KW Living.
Okay. So can they use people from our citywide half of the team to do that kind of stuff, or should they not be doing that?
Lauren, we can have a conversation. I think you
Yeah.
guys have a unique situation being an expansion
Okay.
team.
Yeah, I'd love to
Um,
talk with you more about that.
I think we can have a separate conversation on
Okay, thank you.
that because it's unique.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's really, that's
Thanks.
a really interesting question.
Mhm.
Cool. And it'll probably become more and more common too. As
Yeah.
expansions, but
I'll email you, Rick, to set something up.
Okay.
awesome. Any other team related questions? Okay. So in general, I didn't know if we wanted to touch on unrepresented clients. When you have a listing and you have an unrepresented buyer, always having them sign the consumer guide, the agency disclosure with the bottom section filled out where it says only one realtor involved, and then also our unrepresented buyer agreement. Same with if you have a for sale by owner, use all of those same documents, that consumer guide, agency disclosure, and unrepresented seller agreement.
I would add that the first one that ever gets signed, if they don't meet the person in person and then writing an offer, remember the first one in the loop has to be consumer guide. You have to sign it before they sign any other document, and you have to be able to prove it. To get on it.
Amanda brought up a good point that the consumer guide should always be the very first document signed in the loop. Whether you're meeting them in person or whatever, you know, that should be the very first thing. And you need to be able to prove that it was the first thing signed if you were to ever get audited. So go ahead, Wendy.
You move it up to the first, you always move it to the first position. We can show it, you can see it. You can see it, you can track it. Because as long as you put it first, they're looking for that signature first. If that signature is after the agency disclosure or after the offer is signed, it's a violation. You're supposed to, because remember, first, whatever that word is. And so usually, usually you're sending it to them before you even meet them. Usually you're sending it to them, you're giving it to them when you meet them. And if you're just writing an offer for them, because you know them, make sure it's first, so it gets signed.
Yeah, I always take like a paper copy of consumer guide with me and have them just sign it. And the Dotloop app has the camera built right in that you can scan it into the loop. So that's what I've done in the past. And it all seems and feels very nitpicky until the division wants to have a problem with you. So that's why, like, I mean, ultimately, that's why it's important. Lauren, is your hand, you have another question? Or is that just
Nope.
from before? Okay,
Before.
cool. What's in here?
Katie,
Okay.
the division will check the timestamp. So if we're signing all that in Dotloop, they will check the timestamp on that stuff. So you want to make sure not only the consumer guide, but even when we're if we have a listing and we're presenting offers, they will check to see that you had the agency disclosure signed before the offer was accepted. They'll even check the timestamp on the agency disclosure to make sure that you disclose the agency relationships before you. So you should be presenting all the agency, when you're presenting an offer to your seller, you should be presenting all of the agency disclosures first and then the offers. And even if they're rejecting an offer, have that agency disclosure signed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great idea to have the agency disclosure signed even when it's not accepted. I know a lot of agents don't do that, but that's, yeah, you
It's
really
not just
should.
it's not just a great idea, it's a requirement.
Yeah.
If we get audited and somebody says that they don't believe you ever presented their offer to your seller and they file a division complaint, the first thing the division's gonna ask for is, if you really presented it, show us that agency disclosure. And you say, well, we rejected the offer, so we never signed it. It's a bad answer. It's required.
Yep. So I always put a little box that says not accepted and the date, and then I have them initial right at the top. I have my client initial right at the top for the agency disclosure. And it's a pain when you have a ton of offers, but it's better than having a division issue. Okay. Michaeline. Yeah, so. I know it's not the funnest topic, but that you should have the agency disclosure time stamped before you have the offer time stamped that you presented to your seller. Yeah, we were actually just, while you were talking about it, Rick was talking about it on Zoom, so that worked out well. So yeah, we always have to have the agency disclosure signed to show that the offers were presented. And that way you're protected if the buyer, prospective buyer who wrote an offer comes back and files a complaint and thinks that they did not, that you did not offer. Yeah, it's a great idea to ask for it too. I mean, they're supposed to be doing it, and I've gotten tons of pushback on that before. I'm sure you have as well. People, yeah. Yeah. So. Okay. What else? What other topics do we need to discuss compliance wise? Is there anything that you can think of that we haven't really touched on? Any questions specifically that we have? Amanda said she's trying to think about what keeps her up at night. Rick, what keeps you up at night?
I can talk about it.
Okay, come on up.
Me up at night is rentals. So guys, I understand people do rentals and I love rentals. I built my business on them, but they are the probably most likely way we're going to get division complaints and sued. Be very careful about source of income, and source of income is related to Section 8. There are so many cities that have source of income Section 8 as a protected class, of which University Heights, Cleveland Heights, Cleveland, Parma, those are just 4 of about 18 of them. So when you advertise your listing for, your rental for rent, if you don't put Section 8, yes, somebody will pull your MLS and you can get a fair housing investigation. Rentals, every person has to be treated the same when you're picking up the phone and returning phone calls. We don't do rentals very often, but we make a point of kind of logging as things came in and then you've called back. So you've tried to, follow up. The second thing is when applications come in, a lot, and Rick, I know will have a lot to say about this. If there's a certain credit score that your seller is looking for, I think you can put those credit score terms in the broker comments, but it really behooves you for your client to have a third party checking the background and credit check so that you're not physically looking at people's applications, because us as realtors, that's confidential information. So even if we're just moving it to the seller's email, technically we probably saw information about their employment, their credit scores, etc. So if for some reason you want to do rentals, please be very careful to check the city ordinances. If it says source of income and the protected class is Section 8, make sure you say yes and that you allow it. Do not put in the broker comments, no Section 8. And then do please use a third party. Why not just use a third party? The buyers or the tenants pay for it anyway. And then just put in the broker's comments, please contact Tenant Magic for applications and give the website or the phone number. Try not to see any confidential, because I do believe even with listing rentals where you're taking pictures of people's personal information and then putting it out there on the MLS, and maybe the tenant doesn't want to move, you don't know sometimes some of the backstories, there is a lot of potential liability for getting in trouble with rentals. So just be really careful, please.
Can we talk about that one minute? So if we have a listing.
No, so Michaeline said if we have a listing and we know there's a tenant in there, should we not take pictures? Ultimately, I believe, and please, I'm not an attorney, I believe that if the seller has given a listing opportunity to an agent and asked you to take photos, and the tenant has allowed or been made aware that there are photos being taken, it's okay to photograph them. But when the tenants get into any problems with their landlord, they start to point fingers about anything. And it could be that their daughter's photo was in the bedroom and, she's a young lady and she won a ballet award or something. So just be very careful with tenants' photos. And I feel like sometimes you can kind of get in the middle of things that can be problematic, because a lot of the time they potentially might not want to move out, but they might be being forced to move on. And there was something else about tenants I wanted to say. Ask more questions and it might come back to me.
So can I add, Amanda?
Yes, please do.
So I would just add that Amanda touched on if your landlord client has a credit score requirement, add that into the MLS. If they don't have any requirements, if they're just winging it and saying, oh, let me see the application, I'll make a decision on a case by case, I wouldn't touch that listing, because they're going to set you up for a fair housing violation. If I would encourage them to send you an email, have it in writing. This is my criteria. They have to have a credit score of this. They have to have no eviction history. They have to have no criminal history or no criminal and evictions within the last 5 years, or whatever their criteria is. They need to tell you, and best to have it in writing. And that way, you could even put it in the broker remarks that these are the requirements. And if they make an application, they don't meet those requirements, we know that you're treating everybody the same way. Rentals are going to be the downfall of us with fair housing violations. It's so easy to inadvertently mess up on a rental.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there are testers out there and they will test you. I am absolutely certain I was tested last week, 100% certain I was sitting down with a tester testing me. I think what it used to be the good old days, we could make some rental income, right? When things weren't going so well and we needed like more money during the down months, and we'd like, I built my business on renters, and I just feel like it's just a huge liability these days. Just be careful in every way. And also remember the no pets policy, be very careful, because there are dogs obviously for the ADA and also emotional support that some of them have to be allowed, and you need to know the rules around it, of which I haven't been broken now for 3 months and I'm already forgetting half of them. So please refer back to our ongoing on Facebook. Every time we did a broker update, myself and Rick, there's a file in there that's called broker updates, and it has a lot of these trainings and requirements that we've pulled off of sites like Ohio Realtors to help you stay compliant.
Even if your client allows, say, dogs, for instance, I'm a landlord, I'll let you have a dog, but it's an extra $25 a month. That's fine until that dog is a support, an emotional support animal, or what's the other word I'm looking for? I'm
America's
sorry.
American with disabilities
A
and the
service,
disability.
a service animal or an emotional support animal, then that $25 monthly fee for the dog is out the window. You are not allowed
Yep.
to charge extra
Can't
for
charge it.
for a service animal. And you're not allowed, if you have a no pets policy and it's a registered service, you can ask to see that it's truly a registered, you don't have to take their word for it. You can ask to see the registration to see that it's truly a service dog. But once it's a service animal, they get a free pass with it.
And you cannot ask what disability someone has. If you can't naturally see a disability, you cannot ask the question.
So it's worth, and I won't ever do that.
So Michaeline said, I don't do rentals, she said, nor do I plan to, but if I did, do I just protect myself? She said, by putting in broker's remarks, no pets allowed, or do I not put anything about pets? I believe there's a question about pets. And I think it says yes or no.
It's one of the required fields. Actually, it's a field. I don't know if it's required or not.
I
There
think
is
it
a
says
field.
yes, no, and then it says something like with limitations or something, or with
Restricted or something like that.
yeah, or certain them.
That's usually a homeowner, right? That's not just a normal listing. But if you're doing a rental.
Do you know what I think Rick needs to do is we probably need to have a whole training on rentals. Is it really worth it? Kind of worth the money for some of the exposure you're in with a rental? I don't feel really well qualified to answer all these questions because it's very complicated. And it's definitely, I did a whole training on it for one of my CEs, and I put all my notes in the broker updates, so.
I know, I think I've got this. Honestly.
If you have a second floor duplex for rent and somebody calls you and meets you there and it's a 2-bedroom and let's just say they're disabled, they're in a wheelchair and they say, I want to rent it, I have 5 children. You know, as a realtor, you can never say, why would you do that? Are you sure? How could you do, you just must offer them an application, obviously. There's testers that will be asking, some things that you're like, common sense is probably he's not going to want to rent a second floor, but that's not your question to ask. You would offer them an application.
Also, landlords are required to make reasonable accommodations.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying, I think the biggest thing for me is understanding that sometimes naturally we want to help,
yeah.
And when the tester was testing me, because I sat down in an office and I know it was a tester, he asked me something here's what he asked me. He said, I want to join your team, he said. And he said, but I'm not ready. I haven't got the money to do X, Y, Z, D, D. He said to me, so can I just, get my license out of deposit? Can I onboard and KW, but I don't have the money for MLS and ACAR. So can you just print me business cards? Because you said you give me 100 business cards, 200, and then I can just start being a realtor, but not belong to ACAR. And now I'm sorry, but some of us might get, oh my God, he wants to join my team. And so your emotional goes, oh, hang on a minute. No, you have to join an MLS. You cannot be a part of an MLS until you've joined the board. You have to be a member of good standing. Remember all of just kind of take a deep breath and remember that everything legally has to be followed, because even the testers are trying to trip you up.
I'd be like, okay. I'm just, what you said.
I would say call Rick. Like, honestly, I would say call Rick because Rick's with the broker stuff and with a lot of the legalities, Rick's probably the best. Yeah.
But when you're like you were.
No, I didn't right away. My brain actually took 2 seconds. Cause my, I'm going, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, wow. Yeah, like, have you ever had an interview where they go, I want to join your team? Like after half an hour, I'm going, that's weird. So just remember, and most of the time they're not doing it in person, they're doing it on the phone. They are trying to trip you up on the phone. So that's what I worry about. Like, just be very careful, and it's not to scare you, but just remember all the rules that we learn, they do come into play. And that's why we want to be very careful.
They
And just
come in
offer
on
an
a phone
application.
call or a text message. I mean, I can tell you, I had a tester send me a text message on one of my rentals in University Heights. It was a simple, easy text message. Do you accept Section 8? That was it.
Yep. Yep, so it's. Michael Jones said, what did you say? Would it? Rick, do you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?
Okay, Michael said, what did you say when the person said that? When the person asked if you take Section 8?
Oh, I said yes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's in University Heights and CMHA voucher in University Heights.
We should
is
probably
considered
make a
s-
list.
So I just have a question. So we've done a little bit of marketing with Divvy Homes, like
Mhm.
rent to own on Facebook. And every now and then someone will ask, do you accept Section 8? It's like, no, this is rent to own through Divvy
We
Homes.
have to say what country you're referring to.
Well, we would have a property
Oh,
already there.
okay. Then if it's in the city, that's one of where the source of income is a protected clause, you have to say yes. Otherwise, that's a.
Even if it's rent to own?
Yes, I would imagine so.
Yeah, I don't know.
You
Rick,
don't have to make any special, so we accept Section 8. This guy also had a minimum credit score requirement, and this applicant still had to, all of his qualification standards still had to be met by the applicant. So if they met if they've never been evicted and they didn't have a criminal history for I can't remember what his standard was, and their credit score was at least his minimum requirement, then we would have to accept that applicant. Now, if they didn't have the right credit score, I'm sorry, but you don't qualify. We accept
Mhm.
Section 8, but you the applicant aren't qualifying because of an eviction history or because of your credit or whatever the case may be. But if they hit those minimum standards that are set by the landlord, then, and it's in a city that considers a Section 8 voucher to be a source of income, then we have to accept them.
I should probably get with Jamie at ACAR and compile a list of all of the places that have this right now, just so that we can have that as a resource for the office. I know that there are some cities that are considering it, and ACAR is working to work with cities on that as well, and express to them that the voucher program has a lot of issues with it that make it a burden for small landlords, and trying to work through that. Because it's not that we don't want to accept people who need vouchers, it's that the program itself is problematic and a lot of red tape, et cetera.
You subject
Rick,
yourself to an extra inspection too,
Mhm.
because in that case, University Heights does their regular rental inspection like they do with every other rental property. And then CMHA is going to come in and do their own rental inspection, and CMHA may cite something that University Heights didn't catch or didn't care about. So your clients are subjecting themselves to more inspections, but they have to do it. Otherwise, they will get a fair housing violation.
Yeah. And Rick, Michael was asking about source of income as a protected class with Divvy. So like if he's gotten an ad on Facebook where it's rent to own and the person asks, is Section 8 allowed? Amanda thinks yes, that they would have to say yes, that Section 8 is allowed. So I'm not sure about that one.
Well, it doesn't matter what Divvy's program is, I go back to the source.
Mhm.
Does University Heights say that, does University Heights have source of income as a protected class? Yes. Start
Yes.
there. Yes. I would always start with source.
Okay.
But is it clear?
Yeah, if you clearly said yes to basic messenger, then you're good. Like, I would always just say yes.
Oh, I said that.
Oh, well. That's how you say that. I would
Yeah.
always start with just.
So just say yes and then see what Divvy says.
Like Nick said, the applicant that he was tested, he said yes, but then the application was never gonna have a win.
Okay.
Well,
When in
we're,
doubt.
yeah, when in doubt, just always say yes to that. So
Remember that.
we're about at the end. So what questions do we have? We're almost to the end of our time. Rick, any final thoughts from you?
No, I think, Katie, I think you did a great job covering a lot of stuff. Advertising, I think, is a big one. Dates of signatures we talked about on certain documents are going to be big ones that the state will check us on. Rentals are just a great way to get yourself in trouble.
Oh,
I'm
I
not,
have one more thing too. On the property disclosure, making sure that your seller has filled in every single section. Because so often you see where they don't select one of the boxes. So I would say when you get it back from a seller, just send it back if they have missed anything and say, hey, you missed section F or whatever it is. Because you always want to have that as, and lead-based paint as well, making sure that everything that needs to be check-boxed is check-boxed and all the signatures and initials are there.
and
That's
I'll
something I'm
say
not
on the disclosures, I hope our agents are better than this, but I've seen it a lot in the MLS where, oh, it's an investor, he flipped the house, he doesn't know anything about it. So they take the disclosure, they put an X across the page. They're not exempt from filling it out. They have to answer every question on there. If they don't have knowledge, they answer that they don't have knowledge, but they have to fill it out unless they're exempt from it because it's a bank owned or an estate or transfer on death, I think is one, unless they have one of the exemptions.
Yeah, in which case they should use the exemption form, not the
Correct.
property disclosure itself. So good. Yeah, so thanks for being here and listening. And like I said, I appreciate the patience as I've been trying to get our command and everything more compliant. I'm going to be auditing the .loop templates as well to make those a little bit more streamlined. Got new checklists so that everything matches exactly. My goal is to have all of that rolled out by the beginning of 2022. And we will be hopefully Michael does not like me anymore. But to keep everything super efficient and streamlined so that it's easy to understand. So always feel free to reach out to me or Rick with any questions that there may be. And any last questions before we sign off? All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.